Understanding the Path to Unlocking the Handstand Pushup, a Calisthenics Guide. Before we begin, I'd like to give a little bit of context on this skill. I spent 8 months training for the handstand hold, 4 months training for the handstand pushup, and it'll be 1 year in March 2024 since I've unlocked the skill. Throughout this time, I have developed a very deep understanding of handstands and handstand pushups. It's gotten to the point where the skill feels like second nature to me. It used to be a lot of things going on in my mind in terms of alignment, where I'd have to check my wrists, check my shoulders, check my pelvis, check my legs. And now I've gotten to a point where my body just recognizes what proper alignment is, and it'll automatically start to place me in that position. This is only because I spent a lot of time on the handstand hold, and I spent many sessions practicing the handstand pushup. The more you do it and the more consistent you are, your body is naturally going to adapt. Calisthenics isn't just about doing the exercises and hoping for the best. A lot of it has to do with your mind as well. Now, let's begin with the guide. We are going to be having two groups. Group 1, you are experienced in the handstand with at least a 10-second hold. Group 2, you have little to no experience with the handstand, and you will be primarily using wall assistance as well as pike push-ups. The path to handstand push-up is as follows. We have the warm-up and mobility, followed by the skill block, the strength block, programming and workout plan, as well as a cool down and stretch. The warm-up itself is about 5 minutes long. I like doing these spinal twists where I start at shoulder level, I start dropping my arms down to about hip level, really allowing them to twist and rotate. I like having the internal rotation, it feels very nice. From there, I'll bring my arms up overhead as I continue to twist, really aiming for that upper back area that could get very tight from doing handstand push-ups. I like bringing my scapula into a retracted state, and I'll continue doing these twists before eventually bringing my arms up overhead, starting to bring my shoulders into flexion, bringing my shoulders really close to my ears, squeezing my glutes, practicing a straight body line for the handstands. From here, I will take my side folds, leaning from left to right, usually for about just 2 reps before taking a few back bends and forward folds. From there, I will take a deep squat and just roll through my hamstrings between malasana, deep squat, and a forward fold. The deep squat is something that I do almost every single day. I will do my wrist rotations in this position from time to time, but for the sake of this video, I will be doing everything on hands and knees. Starting off with some dynamic planche leans, I like starting off very mellow when it comes to my wrist and gradually build up more and more intensity as the time goes on. Afterwards, I like to do these wrist walks, starting with having the fingertips pointing straight ahead, and then as I lift my hands off the ground, I like to really peel away at the wrist, having a slight bend of the elbows, engaging my shoulder, just really pushing the ground away and allowing my whole upper body to get a nice warm up. I also like rotating my forearms in various positions as well, just rotating them from side to side. Once I have my fingertips pointed straight towards me, I like having a slight little bend of the elbow as I continue to peel away the wrist off the ground. I believe that a warm up should be done a little more intuitively, really adapting to what your needs are for that day. With that being said, if you'd like a rep count, I'd recommend staying between the 8 to 10 reps per movement or doing 30 seconds in each movement. So now that we've gone through all the motions of extension with the wrist, I like doing the reverse and practicing the flexion as well. I'll go onto the back of my hand as I bend my elbows, making sure that the elbows are going in the same direction as my wrist. This is one of my favorite movements, mainly because it really opens up my upper back and it really does feel good afterwards. I like incorporating the wrist walks in this position as well, and then I'll begin to alternate between having my wrist extended and flexed as I continue to bend and straighten the elbows. From there, I'll start to do some rotation of my arm, just really getting towards the elbow and allowing for any rotation. The idea is that you place yourselves in as many different ranges of motion as you can so that your body gets used to it here instead of placing yourself in that foreign range of motion in the handstand push-up. You can't go wrong with taking different directions and just overall being curious within your own body, seeing what feels good and what doesn't. And this section right here is going to actually be optional. I have a background in yoga, so I love my downward facing dogs. I feel like they are a perfect opportunity to start practicing some of the handstand drills. I'll go from a downward facing dog up into a plank or planche lean, back to downward facing dog, and back into plank. From there, I'll go into an upward facing dog to plank before eventually finishing up with my scapula push ups. And from there, I'll hold the retraction again, this time elevating my shoulders up to my ears and then bringing the shoulders down. Essentially, you're doing shoulder shrugs, doing the same thing in the protracted state. And lastly, finishing up with these tiger bends, having the palms in contact with the ground, bending the elbows slowly. And if you feel good and you'd like to promote a little more of elbow health, then you're going to lean forward. Maybe your chin touches the ground before coming back up, lifting the elbows off the ground and repeating the whole process. This is a typical warm up for me, and I pretty much do the same thing every single day, regardless of push or pull. These are the movements that I found that really work for me, and it just manages to hit all the spots that I personally need. If you guys are interested in seeing a follow along warm up and mobility routine, then of course, let me know down in the comments below. If you have access to a pull-up bar, I would really recommend doing these dead hangs, followed by some scapular shrugs in the same grip, as well as a front lever raise or a swan pull. I also like releasing the bar and holding my shoulders in flexion, really mimicking what it feels like to be in a handstand. Same thing goes with a chin-up or supinated grip. And lastly, we have the warm-up set. One set of push-up, one set of pull-up, and one set of chin-up. I like doing a 3-second pause at the top position as well as a 3-second pause in the bottom position. The same goes for the pull-ups. I like locking out at the top, holding for a 3 count before coming down to a dead hang. After that, I'll do 2 to 3 reps in rapid succession. We are going to go ahead and start with the skill block. Group 1, because you are experienced in the handstands, you are going to start with some freestanding handstand attempts. There's nothing wrong with taking the first set or two on the wall just to get your body nice and warmed up, get it primed for the handstand, and it honestly really does help with the alignment. Group 2, because you have no experience with the handstand hold, we are going to stay on the wall and I will be demonstrating how to do so safely. A good way to get into a handstand if you've never done it before is through this chest to wall entry. You're going to use your hands and feet and start climbing towards the back of the wall. It is important to understand that the closer you are to vertical, the easier it is going to be to fall out. So I am going to recommend that you leave some space between you and the wall to start out and then gradually close that space over time. Having your back facing the wall is a great way to practice your entries. We have the tuck jump and we also have the single leg entry or the kick up. This one allows you to use your pelvis to gently peel away from the wall, allowing you to balance for at least a second. After completing our handstand holds, it is time for the eccentric handstand push-up. Negatives are a great way to practice a more complex skill, and it helps us gain a better understanding of how to perform it. In terms of elbow to shoulder positioning, we want to make sure that we are on the same horizontal line. In terms of wrist and elbow positioning, we really want to make sure that the wrist and elbow are stacked on a vertical line. A few reminders about scapula positioning. A retracted scapula is not ideal. We want to make sure that we're constantly pushing the ground away and holding that protracted state. In terms of elbows, we don't want them to flare out to the side, but we want them to be turned in towards the body. Once again, elbows should not be flared out. If you were to bend in that direction, it is incorrect. If you bend and your elbows are going towards the body, then you are golden. If you haven't unlocked the handstand just yet, then we are going to start in this pike push-up eccentric, pausing at the bottom of the shoulder stand, making sure we are protracted throughout the entire movement. Once we have the arms straight, the shoulders are close to the ears. The moment that we bend the arms, the shoulders begin to move down, away from the ears, while we remain a strong protracted scapula. You can progress this even further into a floating pike liftoff, really making sure that you slowly lift the legs off the ground in order to avoid falling over. I highly recommend that you do these for about 2 to 3 reps, very quality, making sure you are not sacrificing technique just for the sake of getting high number of reps. Remember guys, this is the skill block. We are training this very mindfully. So now that we've established how to perform the first half of the movement, it is time to focus on the concentric handstand push-up. We're going to be starting in a pike push-up, slowly lifting the legs off the ground, holding that bent arm stand, and making our way up to a handstand. You can progress even further by adding an additional negative, after completing the concentric. The pike push-up is going to be a very important movement in order to understand this concentric handstand push-up. We want to start with the shoulders close to the ears, elevated with the scapula protracted. The moment you start bending your elbows is the same moment you want to keep your protraction while also depressing the shoulders, moving it away from the ears. I'll also be demonstrating how to do so with incorrect form. A common mistake that I see a lot of beginners do is that they keep the shoulders elevated throughout the entire movement. This is not how we want to perform it. Elevated shoulders should only be as you're pushing up, but as you're making your way down, we really want to make sure the shoulders are depressed, keeping a strong protraction throughout the entire movement. The same thing is going to be applied in the actual freestanding handstand push-up. So going back to the concentric eccentric reps, we're going to perform the movement in the exact same way, starting in the pike push-up, depressed shoulders, strong protraction. The moment you actually do the pushing motion is the moment you want to start elevating your shoulders. As you start making your way back down, the shoulders are going to start depressing, but making sure you're keeping a strong protraction throughout the entire movement. These are some examples of how I used to look when I first started doing my handstand push-up journey. As you can tell, it is not as smooth as it is today. I really did struggle in this bent arm stand, and it is also the position that I should have spent a lot more time in. Eventually, though, I did start to make some progress, and with the concentric eccentric reps, they began to look like this. The handstand push-up requires a lot of technical work in terms of balancing, as well as some strength work as well. The wall can be of great assistance if used correctly. This is me trying out the concentric handstand push-ups using the wall earlier on. My gaze should be shifted down towards the ground, but as you can tell, I am looking straight ahead at the camera. I do want to keep this guide focused mainly on the handstand push-up, so if you would like to see a more detailed guide on just the handstand hold, the most common problems that I see with it, and how to fix it, then of course, let me know down in the comments below, and I'd be happy to provide it. So instead of using the wall to practice our concentric handstand push-ups, I'm going to recommend sticking to the pike push-up. Once you get comfortable with that, then the next level would be holding a shoulder stand. Then you're going to start making your way up into that concentric handstand push-up. Ideally, you are still practicing your freestanding handstands at least 4 to 6 times a week outside of this session as well. In between your sets, I'd highly recommend incorporating some wrist movements such as these. It is very similar to what we were doing in our mobility section. Another good option is to do some shaking, just shaking the wrist out, shaking the arms, shaking the shoulders. Shaking helps release a lot of tension, and it is something that I do daily. Another option is to use the foam roller. I got a lot of comments asking how to improve our shoulder flexion. One thing that really helped me was using a foam roller to open up my thoracic spine. I'd highly recommend starting with your arms up overhead to simulate a handstand position. You really want to keep your pelvis in a posterior pelvic tilt, meaning no arching the lower back. A good way to practice this posterior pelvic tilt is going to be by going onto the floor, preferably on a soft surface. We're going to start off with driving the knees close to the chest, and then we're actively going to bring them out. What we are doing here is isolating the hips to bring the knees close to the chest and then bringing them far out. The important thing to understand is that the movement is coming from the pelvis and not from the knees. Really think about using your pelvis to drive those knees out. This is going to take some practice. Now, taking a break from the technical side of the handstand push-up and moving on to the strength block. This portion is going to be focusing a little bit more on the reps. We are still focusing on the quality of the protraction, as well as elevating and depressing the shoulders as appropriate. The important thing to understand is that as long as our shoulders still have energy, then we are going to continue spamming these reps until our shoulders are completely dead. The skill block is really where we focus on the technical aspect, and the strength block is where we focus more on building strength. As you build confidence in the pike push-up, we are going to begin to use the wall. You're going to have the option to use either the chest to wall variation or the back to wall. Starting with chest to wall, the important thing to remember is that the closer you are to vertical, the easier it is going to be to fall out of it. So I do recommend leaving some space between you and the wall and practicing getting some handstand push-up reps in. I personally like using the chest to wall variation whenever I want to focus a little bit more on the technical aspect of the handstand push-up, mainly because it follows the same diagonal motion. The back to wall variation is also a good movement to perform in order to gain more shoulder strength. As long as you could perform the kick up to actually get to the wall, then the handstand push-ups themselves aren't going to be too hard. The only difference between this one and the chest to wall is that we aren't following the same diagonal motion that we would be in a freestanding handstand push-up. mainly because our back is going to have a little bit of an arch, and that's going to be completely okay. We just want to make sure that we are squeezing our glutes, engaging the core, and overall just keeping our body nice and tight. Even though you are going to have a slight arch, as long as we maintain these cues in mind, then the motion is going to feel pretty good. I personally felt a lot better on these back to wall handstand push-ups than I did on the chest to wall handstand push-ups when I initially started. I gradually built my way up to using this box for my chest to wall handstand push-ups when I was starting to learn how to do the fishit freestanding handstand push-ups. The strength block should have one primary overhead pressing movement. It could be the pike push-ups, the floating pike push-ups, back to wall or chest to wall handstand push-ups. Alongside these overhead movements, we also want to incorporate some push-ups, regular dips, maybe even Bulgarian dips. I'd highly recommend adding different types of pushing motions into your session as well, especially when it comes to strength work. The training plan will consist of a 10 to 15 minute warm up plus mobility, 3 sets of a handstand hold, 3 sets eccentric handstand push up, 3 sets concentric handstand push up, really focusing on the quality of the reps because this is our skill block. For the strength block, we will pick 3 sets of an overhead pressing movement, pike push up, chest to wall, or back to wall handstand push up. Then we will also do 3 sets of push ups or dips or a combination of the two. We are aiming for 95% effort here, really focusing on burning out those shoulders. Lastly, we have the stretch and cool down. In terms of the frequency of the workout, I'm going to recommend that you do 2 times a week, gradually building up to 3 times a week once your body begins to adapt. So to start off, because we just did a whole bunch of handstands, handstand push-ups, and just overall really worked our front delt, what we are going to start with, and we're going to give you guys 2 options for this. We're going to have our hands right by our hips, and we're either going to do walks where we get our butt close to our feet. The shoulders are going to naturally round forward. That's completely okay. But with our elbows, what we really want to do is try our best not to flare out, but to have them tucked in. So both elbows are trying to close towards the spine, going towards one another. If holding this position feels a little bit awkward, which it might, especially on your wrist, then we could just practice going back to a seated position, bringing our butt close to our feet. Once again, elbows are driving towards one another, and then back to a seated position. This is also a great way to learn the L-sit if that is something you are interested in doing. The only difference for that one would be that you bring your butt close to your feet, and then you bring your butt as far back as you can. So we are stretching right now, so we're not gonna do that the way that I like to do it. And if your wrist and shoulders are cooperating, then you're just gonna scooch as far forward as you can. Either we stay here. Like I said, if the shoulders round forward, it's completely okay. We're just really gonna focus on driving those elbows back. Just like in a handstand push-up. If you'd like, you can extend your legs, and we're just gonna breathe here. I usually stay here. I don't really count for seconds or reps. I do like 5 to 10 breath cycles. That's 1. That's 2, and so on. If I feel like I need a little bit more movement, what I will do is I'll open up to a tabletop, which this position used to be very painful on my wrist. But like I said, you work on it in small increments, and then as your wrists and shoulders begin to adapt, you can begin to add on greater ranges of motion. So I like to extend my legs. I like to push. And if you can, we're gonna try to reach for our toes. Even if your back is rounded, it's completely okay. We're gonna use our toes and we're gonna push them forward, and we're gonna allow the shoulders to naturally protract. So even doing small little rotations with the forearm and elbow and shoulder, even doing shrugs like up and down, is already giving us a major boost in that protraction. And then we're going to do the reverse. We're going to flex the feet. We're going to open up the chest, and we're going to try to retract, just like in the pull-up. And then same thing, shoulders up to the ears, shoulders down, shoulders up to the ears, shoulders down. And we're going to stay here for another 5 breath cycles. And if you'd like, you can alternate between protraction, flexing the foot again, retraction, pointing the foot away, helping us protract, flexing the foot, causing us to retract. Next up, which is going to be entirely optional, I do like my back bends, and it helps balance out all the protraction we've been doing. We're going to start with our toes flexed, and this position might be a lot for some people, especially when it comes to the knee and ankle flexibility. So we're going to start by having the right hand, the right palm on the heel, gripping the foot. We're going to send those hips forward as we open up the arm, the head, the hands are going to follow, the head and the eyes are going to follow the hand. Taking a breath here. And exhale, come back. Same thing on the other side. Left hand on the left heel, opening up. Inhale here. And exhale back. Either we alternate and do about 3 breaths on each side, or if you feel good, you can keep your feet planted on the ground with your hands on the heels, and we're going to push, coming into a full camel pose, focusing on retracting the scapula. This might be a lot on your elbows, so really listen to your body. So I'd like to close out this video with talking about the fails. You are most likely going to fall when you're practicing your handstand push-ups. This is entirely part of the process, so do not be scared. You are going to be okay. The important thing to understand here is that there is a correct way to bail. If you know how to do a cartwheel, then this is going to be your best bet. As soon as you feel you're about to fall over, just cartwheel your way out of there. Another issue that I really had with my handstand push-up journey was tackling too many skills at once. I would separate my single session into a few planche attempts, a few handstand push-up reps, a few L-sit to handstands, and my focus was a little bit scattered. I thought I could tackle multiple skills in one session, but I was wrong. I still made progress. It was just very, very slow. The moment that I decided to really switch my focus to 1 to 2 skills per session, 1 push, 1 pull, is when I really started to see a lot of progress. This is what I have been doing for the past 2 months, training both a pushing skill and a pulling skill in the same day. It does come out to be a little bit on the longer side. However, if you have the time to do it, I'd highly recommend you try it. The only reason I really have the time to do it is because I have a lot of fun in the session. Any time that would go to playing video games or just chilling at home or on my phone or just watching Netflix goes to this session. So I have no problem spending 2 hours a day if it means I'm having fun. You guys have to decide what your priorities are going to be. If you really want to improve in calisthenics, then there's going to have to be some sacrifices made. However, this isn't going to be for everybody. As long as you have fun and you're enjoying what you do, then that's all that really matters. I hope you guys enjoyed this guide. I hope it helped. Hope you guys learned something new. If you did, leave a like, drop a comment down below, let me know what you thought of the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed already. This video did take me a long time to put out. If there was anything you would like clarification on, leave a comment and I'd be more than happy to help. Much love. Peace.